All right, so hi,
Hello.
Shana. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So on this lovely episode of On the Record, for some reason, Shana has put me in a hot seat to put her in a double hot seat.
Yes, I get interviewed today, and this is for our listeners so you can actually get to know me, your host. And I thought no other person would be perfect enough but Miss Renita to come back here with us and do this episode on me. So here we are.
I'm just saying, we all wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So an episode should be dedicated to you as our fearless leader. So we're going to jump into it. Okay. I'm in my Gail King mode, so just be aware. So, very simple question.
Okay.
When did you first fall in love with music?
It was actually in the kitchen with my dad. I was really young. I want to say I was around a toddler. And it's funny because some people say, like, you can't remember back that far. Like, technically you can't. And I was like, oh, I remember vividly. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had woken up. And my dad usually, especially when we were with him, he would be like, no, I'll take it, right? I'll take her. And he would go in the kitchen and cook and dance and sing while he was doing it. And I just remember that being the best thing that I had ever seen, right? And I was just like, oh, this is great. That's why my love for food, but also my love affair with music started. And my dad had so many vinyl records, like he collected them. And I just remember there's always music in our house. And I, like, to this day, because I'm now a vinyl collector, if you can't tell in the studio, the scratch of the vinyl, all of that, just, it sends something to me. Like, I have a visceral response to it. Like, I get chills. And my love affair started there. And he was a love of, Frankie Beverly, Mays, Luther Vandross, like, you name it. He, like, had a few songs from Beatles that he loved. Like, nothing was off the table. Like, music just was a natural part of my life. And I'm pretty sure that was right around the time I was like 4 or 5, something like that. Yeah.
What is one of your fondest memories that you can think of when you were in a place? It could be good or bad, but it took this song to either snap you out of it, get you where you want to be. Because, when you're good, you hear a song, it makes you happy. If you're sad,
right.
Sometimes if you're sad, you may hear a song and you want it to be sad, right. So it connects with that.
Yeah, that's
and you just need that good cry.
Yeah.
That real cry. That can't catch it. Yeah, like, so you need. Yeah. So, do you have a moment that you can think of, and then what was that song in that moment?
So, it's so funny. I love music my entire life and all kinds of different things, pop, rap, R&B, soul, rock at certain points, gospel. But I think it was around the time, like late middle school, early high school, where I just really started to like lock in on my favorite artists. And at that time, that was when Alicia Keys first came out. And it was songs in A minor. And I remember just being blown away. Like, I was just like, oh my God, it's this black girl who was kind of rough and a little gritty, and she played piano like nobody's business, and she was speaking directly to me. Like, that's exactly what I felt like. Every single song on that album was literally like drawing me in. And at that point, I was going into high school. I was a freshman. And I was, of course, a teenager and super emotional. And I was like, I heard things about boys. And I was in my feelings. And I had a boyfriend at the time. And I remember songs in A minor. And when I tell you I listen to albums, I listen to the entirety of the albums, right? Especially at that time. And there was like a little kind of prelude, like 2 minutes. I want to say maybe it'd been less. Never felt this way about love. It might be like, I don't know, maybe cut 12 or 13, track 12 or 13 on the album. And it's just her and the piano singing, like nothing else. Like you could, like there's no other sound. And it goes like, I never felt this way about loving. And it's just her like playing piano. It's very simple. And I was like, this is the best thing ever for my little teenage broken heart or like my love filled heart. And that was one for me because at that point, the young boy I was dating, we were long distance because I moved from LA to Arizona. And so almost like every day I'd be playing songs in A minor. And so for me, just trying to navigate what those feelings were, like there's butterflies on that album, obviously Fallen in that album, Teenage, you know, Love, like all of that is on that album. And so it just made me start to understand and identify what my emotions were. Like, because as a teenager, you don't know what they are. You're just like hormonal and doing all of the things. And there was just something about songs in A minor that reeled my emotions in and locked me in to understand what my feelings were at that time. So for me, that was it. She even actually inspired me. So she's the reason I actually learned how to play the piano.
So that was my next question.
Yeah.
So with that emotional connection, along with learning the piano, was there anything else that inspired you? Because it sounds like that was the album, the songs, everything just came together. Like lyrics, composition, everything. So tell me a little bit more. So you started playing piano because of it?
I did. Growing up, I had always been a sports girl. So I played basketball since I was about 7 years old up through high school. Like, so I played for about 11 years. And I'd had a physical outlet, and I was always a bit of a nerd, which I loved. Like, and I still do. I love that I'm a nerd. But I had never had a real creative outlet, ever. Right? So that's why it was so mind-blowing for me getting so tapped into emotion and music. And I was like, oh, like it'd be really cool to learn how to play the piano like Alicia. And I remember I was a sophomore at that point when I committed to be like, okay, I'm going to learn it. And we had a music teacher in high school, and I walked up to him and said, I really, really want to learn how to play the piano. Like it was like elevated classes at my school too. It wasn't like, oh, teach me how to do things. Yeah. I literally was like, I need you as the teacher to teach me how to play the piano like Alicia Keys. That is it. And I remember starting, he agreed to do it. Shout out to Mr. Sable. Mr. Sable. And I remember him like showing me the proper ways to do things, and you're going through all the things, and I was like, Alicia's hands aren't like this, they're like this. Like, I remember. And he was like, I've seen her play, but she's more advanced and she's got her own rhythm. Right. You need to do it like this, right?
Like, I need you to learn chopsticks first, and then we get to Beethoven.
Yeah.
But
I need you to start here. And I was like, oh, okay. So, like, you know, I did that, and for me, connecting to music and reading music, it was actually a challenge for me in the beginning, because I don't know if I've had a little bit of like undiagnosed kind of dyslexia, and just reading and connecting things a little bit. So reading things in general have always been a challenge for me, but I've always gotten through. Like, I've worked my way through them. But learning music was really hard for me to connect in the beginning. And the language of music and how it's on the music and on the sheets, right? But then there was one moment where it all just made sense. Like, it was like one day in class when I was like, oh, now I get it. Because there's that moment that happens. And I fell in love with it. And I remember my first piano, like my first recital concert, I played My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion from Titanic. And
Celine.
Lord knows we all love Celine.
Celine Dion.
When I tell you, and it's the longest song on the piano, by the way.
The song is long.
So long. But I remember being so proud of myself, and I was like, I fiend for that creative outlet, and I finally found it. Yeah, and it was because of her. It was because of her. Yeah.
Because of Miss Keys that we're now playing.
Yeah.
Music is universal, right?
It is, yeah.
And we talked about doing on the record, and you gave me a little bit of, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm thinking. I think this would be great. For you, what is the most important thing when it comes to music connecting to one's spirit?
I think you allow the music to take you over. I find a lot of people today, one, have more short attention spans, so they're waiting for something to hit them very quickly and they move on, right? I think music has to kind of fall over you like water does. And I think you have to take your time and just feel it versus analyzing it, if that makes sense. Because that's how I listen to music. Any genre, whatever it is, I want it to kind of fall over me and just experience what's happening. Right? Because there's so many things that go into it, right? The production of creating a song is a very long and detailed process, and there's a lot of people involved, but it's like, whether you have musics or sounds, and you have engineers in there, and you have vocals, and you have all of the things that are put together for this experience for you, so just accept that as it is. And so that's what I always lean to when I'm like, oh, my favorite part, or the thing that I want people to really focus on, just let it be what it is. And if you do that, you'll tend to find you enjoy so much more of it just because you're allowing it to be itself. Yeah.
With that, right?
Yeah.
So you let music
wash over
you, right?
Yeah.
When you have music washing over you, if you could pick 5, and I know it's a lot of musics, and I know this may be hard to narrow it down.
I'm getting ready.
But in those moments where you're just like, just let it rain.
Yes.
What are your 5 go-to genres of music?
Ooh, okay. My first love is always going to be R&B, rhythm and blues. That was my first love. That was my first introduction. Like with my dad, it was all R&B, but I love R&B so much because it really genuinely starts with the vocals and the lyrics. That's what you're getting in true R&B, is vocals and lyrics. And everything kind of accompanies and circles around it, right? But they're talking about something. Like, it's a very clear story, most times about love, right? And what it does to you. Because love is the most important thing in this world in general. Like, however way you slice it, love is the only thing that actually matters. So for me, R&B was always first. I also grew up in church, so for me, gospel's everything. Like, it fuels my fire. And then hip hop and rap, 1000%, is one of the most creative and mind-blowing, like, consuming genres that have just, like, captured the entire world. And I love every bit of it. Because we get to actually have a voice in it, and it does something. So that's 3 so far, right? Is that 3 or 4? R&B, gospel,
rap, hip hop.
My next one that would come right after that is jazz. I love jazz. I love Miles Davis. I love John Coltrane. I love, like, you name, like, it's just, I am a big fan of instrument. Right? And I really do appreciate when it's just a singer and an instrument and there's nothing else there. That's the most natural, raw version of music. So just hearing instrument on its own is so empowering to me. And like, it's like I vibrate to it. It's crazy. But jazz. And then my 5th one, this one's hard.
I know.
neo soul would have to go in because there's a balance too because I really love rock music too, but I'm like neo soul would probably go first because of my emotional spirit. Yeah. So those would be my top 5.
So in your 5,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a common thread
Mm-hmm.
of it starts with rhythm and blues,
Yeah.
but rhythm and blues to me influences every
single one.
single
one. Yeah.
Um, so with On the Record, we talk about a lot about how music connects with one's feelings, one's emotions,
mental health,
one's mental health. Thank you, and wellness.
Yeah.
So for you, with those being your 5, do you find also maybe a common thread that helps you to with when you're trying to deal with, because it's also calming too, like hip hop can be a little fast, same with gospel. I mean, I guess if you honestly take gospel and hip hop, it can take you on a roller coaster. It can get you pumped, but you just like or rap could get you ready to be out in the streets, like let's do this, so those, but then everything else kind of like smooths you out. So do you feel with those 5 that they connect to you, like mentally helping with your, like that mental therapy that you may need in that moment?
100%. I'm naturally an introvert. It's just who I am. And I tell people that, and some people in my life, friends who have known me for a very, very long time, decades, are like, "Oh, that's so strange. I don't see that at all." And I'm like, "That's because you see me for that moment, and then I retreat, right?" So I'm naturally very much an introvert. So I like calm energy, because also with the normal work that I do, I'm around people all the time and making a bunch of decisions. Like my schedule is chaotic. So there's a lot of energy happening around me. So I like to retreat and be by myself. And I'll zone out. There's jazz playing. There's whatever to get me back to like steady state for my own emotions. So it does. And all of them speak to the things that I need in the moment. It's actually ridiculous how many playlists I have because I curate so many different playlists. It's not ridiculous. I have hundreds that I create based off of mood, energy, whatever the vibe is at that time, based on the year. Like, it's out of control. But it keeps me balanced. And I need it to the point where I don't know if I could exist without music at this point. Because it fuels my everyday. And I'm not a person who likes to sit in pitch silence unless I need it because it's just, the day's been a lot. But I need there to be a soundtrack to what's happening.
That almost sounds like a mic drop.
Like right? Like
a soundtrack.
I need a soundtrack for my life at all points throughout the day.
So when you sat and you were like, okay, this is what music does for me and my well-being. Yeah. And I want to actually share this. Yeah. Tell me about that moment where you sat, and I also want to know if music was playing during this time when you sat, and I want to know what it is. Yeah. When you sat and was like, you know what? I think this would be great, and I wonder if other people feel this way, and I think this would be an awesome podcast. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the backstory of how we got here.
To On the Record. So it actually started early to mid 2023 when, because 2023 was an incredibly difficult year for me. It's probably one of my worst as I've been on this earth for almost 39 years. And it was because I had a lot of deaths. So I had lost my brother that year. I had lost my grandmother. And I was going through kind of like a discrimination-based case at work that was happening to me. And so there were so many things happening that I didn't know how to grasp onto. But at the same time, I was also balancing what I needed next. Because when chaos is happening like that, You go to the safe spaces, and I didn't feel like I had any safe spaces. So I was like, something is off. Like, is there time for a career change? Is there a need for a move? Like, do you need a fresh location that you need? Like, I need something had to happen, right? And so I'm a huge podcast fan. And I remember just searching. I'm like, okay, let me see if there's like music podcasts that kind of really talk about this part. And I couldn't find one. And I was like, oh, that's strange. Like, interesting. Because there's plenty of podcasts that talk about music or talk about artists and things like that, but it's not necessarily on the level of how is it helping you get through things. And it was just an idea that popped into my head, and I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. But when you're in a space, in a dark place like I was in that year, you're like, okay, well, cool. Leave that on the shelf. That's not going to be me, right? And I'm a very structured person. I'm methodical about the things that I do in my life and how I've kind of tracked my career and things like that. So that was outlandish to me. And be like, first of all, you're going to do a podcast, right?
You can do it.
Right. So as the year went on, I kept getting this kind of nagging feeling, like God was talking to me, right? Like, I have a really strong relationship with God. And I'm very, like, just spiritual in general. Not super religious, but spiritual. And he kept putting it on my heart. And he was like, what about that idea you had? And so when this discrimination kind of case happened for me at work, at the end of that year, I felt like it was God saying, hey, put an idea in your heart. You haven't listened to me. Let me shake some stuff up so you can realize that I need you to do that, right? And so I took it as that, and I was like, okay, he's trying to make me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And
introvert,
right?
He
needs me
out.
To come out. So I had made a decision at the end of 2023 that none of the energy that existed in 2023 would carry into 2024. So I was like, so what is that? And so I choose a word for myself every year, and 2024 was all intentional. It meant everything I did had to be rooted in an intention. And so I said, okay, so God put this idea in my head, and he put it on my heart. I have to follow it. So I kind of tossed the idea around, told a few friends, and they're like, oh, it sounds great. And I was like, okay, so are we really going to do it? And so mid-year, it was like, we're going to jump in, and we're just going to go for it. So I converted my third bedroom in my house into this podcast. I'm just pouring money into, like, no, like, God put it on my heart. I just need to follow it, right? Like, there's no option. I'm going only my instincts are telling me to do. So I built the podcast studio. I hired an assistant. I started looking at, like, where I was going to stream it. I had, some friends of mine help and start building a website for me. And I started coming up with my guest list and asking people who, I admire and care about and love so much to be on the first season. So I was just starting to make everything happen. Also doing it terrified, right? Like even sitting here right now, talking about it, like, I'm like, oh, all of it gave me incredibly high anxiety. I wasn't sleeping well, just because I'm not used to going into a full creative space, or even making, like, a career change, if you will, right? And so I'm doing it all, and at this point, it was like, okay, like, we're here, right? Like, we're here. We're here to talk about music and how it impacts our lives on a daily basis, and how it helps us get through things. And because not everybody can afford therapy, but everybody can have access to music, right? So for me, it was a done deal. So that's kind of how On the Record was born. And I remember praying about it, and I talked to one of my friends who's clairvoyant, and she sent me a message from my dad, who passed away a little over 3 years ago, who is everything in the world to me. And the one thing he told her was that that podcast is going to save and help our people keep going. So, and it was kind of the last little push I needed to be like, you're in the right place. Like, you need to believe that this is going to happen. So, that's the story behind why we're sitting here right now.
So you took a chance on yourself.
Yes.
Invested in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Took something that you are passionate about, in love with.
Yes.
That was your like blanket.
Yeah.
And decide to let me now create a quilt that now will touch thousands upon millions upon billions upon trillions of people.
That's the goal, and I don't know, it just feels right. It's weird to just say that because I'm an analytical person. I love facts, I love science, all of that. And I'm like, no, but it just instinctually feels right. And whatever happens, happens. I can't control that part, but God put it on my spirit for a reason. And it's my job to see it to its completion. And I'm very happy we're here. I've had, even as to before this episode, I've had so many incredible conversations with friends on this podcast and people I respect and work with on this podcast. And it's lit my fire to finally go back to my creative outlet. And that's why we're here. So I love it. I love it.
Well, I love it. And I appreciate that I am one of the ones that was asked to be a part of this project, but also to interview you too.
Yes.
Which is also nervous all in itself. One of the things too, what I like with On the Record, again, with music being universal and open to everyone, is like you said, you gave your top 5, but then you were like, oh, well, rock could have been in there, and it's just by chance neo soul creeped in at number 5.
Reggae, reggaeton, Latin, like you name it. Like, my list is so incredibly long. I'm the worst person to ask like what your favorites are, because I geek out over like almost everything.
Well, it's hard because it's so much music.
Yeah.
All in the world.
Yes.
And then you have to, then I'm here saying, narrow it down to 5.
And I'm like sweating, like, what? Like, what do you mean? Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, I have to win $100 and this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, like we're at like deal or no deal. But one of the things that's great about this project that turned into a podcast is everyone, which is not really a spoiler, but so many people have so many different loves for different genres of music.
Yes.
But one of the things I love about this podcast is when you listen to everyone's story, it's a common thread. Yeah. Which brings it back to music being so universal.
Exactly.
What would you like for your audience to get? What is the takeaway from On the Record for you? Like, if someone came up to you and said, Shana blank, what would be like the melting heart? Like, you get it. Like, what would that moment feel for you?
I would want somebody listening to this podcast to feel seen or heard by any of these conversations. Because what we don't realize as humans, as so many of us are going through similar things, and a lot of times when you're in a darker space, you feel like you're alone in it, right? And you're feeling alone in it, and somebody be like, oh my gosh, I listened to your On the Record episode about anxiety, and I had no idea that I might actually have anxiety. I found out I did, and now I get help for it. Or I figured out that I have more self-worth, and the quote that I got from so-and-so that was on, your episode help me kind of stick my chest out a little bit more and believe in myself a little bit more. Like, those are the things that I care about, because I care about the human experience. Life is hard, like incredibly hard, and we all don't spend enough time supporting each other, and being very intentional about supporting each other from an authentic place. And that's what I want people to get from this and understand, and on the record, because music to me is what feelings sound like, and you get to connect to it in a certain way, because there's so many different people who love so many different genres that you would never expect, but it's the one thing that brings every single person on this planet together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so if we can circle our conversation around these albums, these songs, these artists, these producers, these writers, on the emotions that they bring out in people, we'll all be way more connected. Way more connected.
And I think it helps with people sharing too.
Yeah, talk about it more.
Yeah.
That's why I say let's talk about it.
You may feel uncomfortable, like you're an introvert.
Yes.
So we're talking probably to how many introverts,
right.
That's watching and listening. The one great thing about it is everyone likes music.
Mm-hmm.
Either you like it or you don't.
Right.
It's an artist you may like or don't.
Yeah.
We have our disagreements on one artist that will remain nameless.
Uh-huh.
But it sparks a conversation.
It does.
So as two introverts, the music, we connect.
Yeah.
And it opens up dialogue.
Yeah.
It opens up communication. Yeah. It opens you up for not being an introvert.
Right.
So for me, I think that's another important thing that I think this podcast will give people, and that's the takeaway I see. Like, it will just open, and like you said, people will start talking and communicating. We kind of don't do that as much because we're in our head a lot. So it's not intentional, but we could just be tied up, like in our work.
Yes.
It's demanding. You have stuff going on home. You may not want to share.
Yes.
And you're trying to deal with it internally. And in order to do that, you put on a record to be like, you know what, let me just drown out the world.
Yes.
And if it's like a DMX that gets me pumped and may get all my anger out, then I can do that. And then turn around and play like some Mr. Al Green behind you to bring me back down and be like, we're not gonna kirk out on the world. Like, I'm good. Like, but that's what I think is a really good takeaway.
I love that. And I love that it does get to bring out some of those conversations, because you're really right. Like, people don't talk as much anymore, right? It's not. We're much more dialed into phones and social media than we are actual human interaction. And I think, I'm hoping, right, this helps spark conversation with the people around you or the people you care about feelings or emotions, whether they're sad or difficult to deal with or incredible, right? Like, there's songs that we connect to, like, oh my gosh, I remember when I was like graduating and this was playing, right? Or that's a song that so-and-so played at their wedding, right? Like everything, great emotions too come from music, right? Like, the full spectrum. And just talking about that, because I've gotten in full conversations yesterday, and because I flew in from Seattle, because I was in Seattle for work this past week. And me and my Lyft driver were talking about Kendrick Lamar's album GNX. And she's this beautiful Asian woman, like, and how much we both love it, and how incredible, like, his trajectory has been, and the respect that everybody's now finally, giving him the right amount of credit and, like, fame and accolades. So, like, all music connects everybody. I talk to everybody about music. Yeah. Like, and now it's also made me more comfortable in general just talking to, like, strangers about things. Like, I would have never done that. I'm the person in the Uber who has my headphones in. Don't talk to me. Drop me off where you just drop.
Oh, you're one of those.
I'm one of those.
We're one of
those. Exactly. I'm that same person in the airport. Like, don't talk to me. There might not even be anything playing, but I'm putting these headphones in so you don't interact with me. And I do it a lot less now, because I'm getting a little bit just more comfortable talking to people. That
And
might
then-
have also been a thing for my therapist. Yeah, just saying.
Shout out to
Kate.
Hey, Kate. Another thing too is age. Like
Yeah.
going to the airport, my Lyft driver was an older gentleman,
Yeah.
and he was playing Whitney. So if anyone that knows me
yes.
knows, I want to cry right now. Every time, like Whitney, that's the end all be all for me.
Yes.
Well, one of many, I should say. But
Yeah.
Whitney Houston, to me, she will always be the voice. No one can hold that title. Whitney Houston has it. So he's playing Whitney, and I'm in the back jamming, but I guess he didn't realize I was jamming to Whitney, and I did have my AirPods in, but like
Yes.
you said, they weren't on.
Yeah.
So I'm actually singing Whitney.
Yeah.
And not in good tone, but so
That's all right.
he went and turned it down, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm like, "What? Why are we turning down Whitney?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh," because to him, I guess I looked young.
Oh.
So he thought like, "Oh, you don't want to listen to
Right,
Whitney," and I'm
right.
like, "Sir, if you now you gotta now repeat the whole song." 'Cause
Right.
and he was like, "Oh, you like you no." He said, "You know Whitney." I said, "No, Whitney." like
What? Yeah.
I was like, "Sir, please don't take offense." And I said, "And if you offended, I'll double your tip." But sir, this is Whitney to the Houston,
Right.
Like
yeah. To the Houston.
Like
Yes.
so, yeah. So and literally for the rest of the drive, we're talking about like
Yes.
old Whitney, how she just smashed Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You," and he didn't even realize that was a remake.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so it was definitely an older gentleman. He was definitely a gentleman of a certain age, but he told me his age. But yeah, like it's, and again, you wouldn't think.
No,
and
you never know.
You never know. And
Yeah.
with so much samples and everything,
Yeah.
that's another thing that I like about this podcast, is because everyone's music choice is like all over.
Yeah.
I think it also gives more and more for different generations to connect.
Yes.
Because then
Yeah.
you are getting maybe the original
Mm-hmm.
of what you're listening to, or
Yeah.
you may have a guest that didn't even know
Yes.
that was a sample.
Exactly.
So it's almost an educational
Yeah, it is.
part too of the
Yes.
the therapy and
Absolutely.
the mental health,
music
and
history here.
everything.
Like it's when I tell you, music has gotten people through wars. Music has gotten people through the craziest of times. And I love that you mentioned that, because I have such a level of appreciation for how music is actually built and created.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm like, we celebrate everybody here. We celebrate the artists, the producers, the songwriters, the engineers, you name it, the people playing instruments. If you do live like instruments in studio, like all of it is such a beautiful process. And it's literally an art for a reason.
Yeah.
It's an art. It's puzzle pieces getting put together to give an experience to you. But I love that, because I'm thinking about the Lyft driver. You talking about your, like, when I tell you the conversation was deep, like we talked the entire 30 minutes to the airport, right? And I just loved it. I think it's the one thing that's going to save us, to be honest, because the world is chaos right now, for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And I think this will help us kind of reconnect ourselves to each other when everybody's trying to rip us all apart from each other. Right? So I think it's gonna be a wonderful ride. I hope you all stay tuned for this wild ride.
They will. They would. I mean, why not?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, all right. Last thing.
Okay.
Burning question.
Oh no.
This is a good one.
Okay. I'm ready.
So, Alicia Keys.
Yeah.
This album.
Yeah.
You This was your end all be all launch into
yeah.
my mental. You are saving my young teenage everything right now. Is there a favorite lyric from that album?
Oh man.
Where at any time during a song, like if you hear it, you're like, ooh, like this lyric.
Oh man.
I'll even give you two, because Songs in A Minor is a really, for me, it's personally, it's my favorite Alicia Keys album. Yeah. I think it was very well written.
Yes.
So I know this is a hard one for this album. Jeez. So I'll give you two if you can think of two. But is there any one that stands out?
Okay. Oh man. Oh, it's so hard. I'm like, my brain is like in overdrive right now.
You're probably going through every song.
Every literal song.
Yep.
I don't know if I can choose. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I can actually choose. Because some of my favorite songs on the album are Yes, Never Felt This Way, Yes, I Loved Fallen. Butterflies is one of my hands down favorite records of hers. Ooh. No, I can't choose. You know what? That might be a to be continued. Because now I need to really think about it. Because as I was thinking through choosing the album for this episode, that's the one thing I did. I started reading through all the lyrics, because I actually have a book with all of the lyrics. All of it.
I mean, you're a pianist.
Just because I do. I also obviously I have her over there on my keyboard. Yeah, her music on my keyboard. It was still probably, I'll give one. It was still probably Never Felt This Way. With her saying, I've never felt this way about love and it feels so good. Baby, it feels so good. Because she has so many pauses in her lyrics in that specific 2-minute kind of interlude that lets you sit with what she just said. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was in love. Like, I thought it was. Put it that way. Right? I was
in love.
I was 15.
You were in love. That was puppy love, but
it wasn't
it's
real.
Puppy love.
It was surface level,
right?
At best. But it was really like, oh, like this is what love is, and that's what was kind of connecting to me. Like, oh, I didn't know what love was, right? Like I'd never seen real holistic kind of stereotypical movie love in my real life with parents or anything like that. So for me, I'm like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Like I'm tapping into and trying to understand, and I've been on that journey ever since. Trying to figure out what it's actually supposed to feel like.
Well, that's another episode.
That's all. That's a series.
That's
to talk through. But I've literally followed her. I have every single album that she's ever had on vinyl. And to me, they just keep getting better and better. Because look, I could go into. I almost chose Diary of Alicia Keys. Then I was like, no, we need to start at the beginning.
You have to start at the beginning.
You gotta start at the beginning of when the love affair started.
And right, you can't. That's
yeah, I would have.
That's a whole lot of material to jump to get to Diary.
Because Diary was, when I tell you, Diary got me through college. Yeah, it got me through college, and that's a whole other love story situation. But woo, man, but no, yeah. To be continued on more lyrics, but I can't wait to hear some of our listeners. Go to the website, go to the social media pages, drop in if you are an Alicia Keys fan as an artist. What are those songs for you? What are those lyrics for you? I can't wait, and I will gladly respond in those chats and have those conversations because this is where I geek out. But please do tell me.
All right. So she set the challenge out.
I did. Challenge accepted.
Challenge she accepted it for you all.
Yeah,
so
I did.
Now you have to.
You gotta go.
Now you have to go out
I
and
want
do
to
it.
hear from all of you.
Like now you have to make this happen.
Exactly. I got it.
All right. I think I did Gail pretty good. If by chance, Miss King, you saw this, hopefully I did you.
Renita King did it.
You know.
Yeah.
My black journalist.
Yes,
this is journalism.
It is.
This is
it is.
Real talk, tough conversations.
It is. It's epic. You did an incredible job.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you all for listening today. And please, flood social media, flood the website. I love hearing from all of you. I love hearing all about the albums and the tracks that you all love and connect to. It literally feeds my soul. And I'm so appreciative for you. But I can't wait to talk to you all next time when I'm back in the interviewer seat.
Yes. And the rest of us are back in that hot seat. The double hot seat.
The double hot seat.
Double hot seat.
Thank you all so much. Talk to y'all soon. We're out.